on the last episode of Court Thoughts.
Words about your arrest record. What the hell?
Yo, the sign is real simple, B. It says wrap it up. Wrap that shit up, B.
All right, so moving into number 6, I have chosen the 1995 to 1997 Toronto Raptors uniform. This uniform for me is so cool because it just reminds me of my childhood. Again, it's another one of the things with the colors. At that time, I remember Jurassic Park was a big thing as well. And funnily enough, in the late 80s, David Stern had made a decision that he was looking to try and expand the league into Canada. That they were already having exhibition games there, and they had pretty good draws of crowds. And there was concerns that they had previously had about these being really big hockey locations. So hockey teams were pretty big. Hockey is obviously a huge sport in Canada, and they didn't want to have any sort of. There's a big investment that obviously comes into expanding the league and then having expansion games, making sure that having expansion teams. It's really important that they have the location, the feasibility, and there's obviously a financial return that has to come into it. So when you think about, them just deciding to expand a team, it's not as easy as let's make it happen. And one of the things that I thought that was really cool that I saw when I was doing my research is Toronto did actually have a team in the NBA. In 1946, there previously was a team which was actually called the Toronto Huskies. And it was part of the Basketball Association of America. So it wasn't actually part of the NBA. But the Huskies actually folded in the 46, after the 46-47 season. And Toronto didn't actually host another NBA game until the 70s when the Buffalo Braves played a total of 16 regular season games at the Maple Leaf Gardens from 1971 to 75. So Buffalo, New York is northern New York, and they eventually obviously moved and then became what we know now as the LA Clippers. Now, something that was really cool was when they were looking at expanding the league into Canada, they were originally thinking about trying to open back up that Toronto Huskies name and moniker. And they actually decided that the team was going to have a nationwide contest to help them decide the team and develop the colors of the logo, which I thought was that's really cool. Not a lot of places do that, at least now. I can't think of anywhere that teams have done that now. So some of the teams that they actually narrowed down to, the mascots that they narrowed down to, there was a total of 11 prospects. There was the Beavers, straight trash. Bobcats, no thank you. Dragons, it's pretty interesting. Grizzlies, which actually ended up getting used, which is funny enough. You also had the Hogs, Raptors, Scorpions, T-Rex, Tarantulas, Terriers, and even the Towers. Now, the Towers was actually a eventual runner-up, which is pretty cool. Now, one of the things that was really, I think, as I mentioned before, that had a big influence was the fact that the movie Jurassic Park had come out, and this was fucking huge. This was an absolutely huge movie, and so I'm sure that had much more of an impact. Coming back to the jersey design and the uniform design, again, the whole thing with colors is just another big thing. The pops of purple that you get, obviously on your away jersey, it's predominantly purple. You've got these jagged pinstripes again, gotta love those pinstripes. Those pinstripes are fire. And then the purple and red just really went well with each other. So this is just one that I had to add on the list. It just reminds me of my childhood so much. Really playful design, really cool design, and I couldn't go past it. So that for me had to be number 6.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack.
Next on the list, number 5, I had to go with the 1986 Atlanta Hawks. I really, really like this jersey design. I think it's just the boldness of the line work that they have on it, and it's the color. But also, when I see this jersey, this whole uniform, I think of two people. I think of Spud Webb. I think of Dominique Wilkins. Dominique Wilkins obviously wore this uniform when he had his battle with Jordan for the 88 dunk comp. And is it the 88 dunk comp? Wait a minute.
Hold up.
Fact check this shit. Back. All right. So it's actually a couple of different dunk competitions that this was worn. So in the actual year that this uniform was debuted, the 1986 dunk competition, Spud Webb wore it. And so that's when I think of Spud Webb. And then you have the subsequent years after where the battles took place with Dominique Wilkins and Michael Jordan. So that's where I was getting a little lost. But hey, you got it right? Ain't trying to spit some bullshit. Unless we're talking T-Talk. Check that out. So this uniform, I have to say, yeah, coming back to it, the color, the memories of the dunk competition, they all kind of like mingle in with each other. And it's just one of those uniforms that you see and it's like superbly iconic, but I had to include it. Number 5, Atlanta Hawks, 1986. It's got to be it. All right, number 4 on the list. I couldn't go past the pinstripe. Now, people, when you think of pinstripe on a uniform, you can't go past Orlando Magic. Orlando Magic started in 1989, and the name comes from the connection to Orlando Disney Park, so Disney World, and so Magic, obviously, Magic Kingdom. That's where the connection comes. But I really like this uniform because of the fact that it was so different. The pinstripes were obviously on the top and the bottoms, which for me is generally a no-no, but again, it just reminds me a lot of my childhood. So this uniform was worn for quite some time, and they've obviously introduced aspects of the pinstripe throughout their years, but I see this and I think of one of my favorite players of all time, Penny Hardaway. I also think of the dominance that the Orlando Magic had in their early years with the partnering of Penny Hardaway and Shaq. Like, the guys coming out the gates so young, so dominant, so influential in the game of basketball, and they didn't just influence the game, like they influenced the other things that went around it, you know? Like, I've spoken in my previous video where I talk about my 3 favorite non-Jordans, which make sure you check that out. I'll leave that link in the description. You also come to mind thinking about Penny Hardaway's influence on the sneaker game, as well as Shaq. Shaq had some amazing shoes back in the day. Shaq Gnosis, for me, is one of my favorites. Just a really cool design, and the team was so good. And they were also in other things like movies, you know? We're not going to talk about Kazam. No, don't talk about Kazam. Don't talk about Kazam. Don't talk about Kazam. Blue Chips. Blue Chips is a fire movie. If you haven't checked it out, it's one of the greatest basketball movies of all time, in my opinion. One of, I would not say the best, but it is really, really good. And that's actually the connection how Shaq was able to get that influence to get Penny to get drafted by the Orlando Magic. Obviously through a trade, which took place with Chris Webber. But the uniform it's just really, really cool. Like the white, the black, the blue, the colors, they just really work together. The blue is not really dominant. It's a sub, like, what would you call it? Like a tertiary, third party sort of factor, but it just really pops on the black and the white. And for me, man, the uniform is just really, really cool. I really like it, and that's why I had to put it on number 4. And if you don't like it, well, maybe you like number 3, 2, or 1. Let's get into it. All right, we have entered into my top 3. Now, my third on the list is the 1996 Timberwolves fit. Dude, the trimming that's on the edges with the trees, and the time that this uniform was out, the team that was part of that was like so exciting. Kevin Garnett is one of those players that he kind of reminds me a lot of guys like Chris Webber, where they were bigger players, but they didn't necessarily play exclusively like big players. Like they put the ball on the ground, they had this speed, but the intensity that the big ticket played with, it was so infectious. And this uniform, again, they had that same sort of design aspect across all three uniforms. They really didn't change. If you look at all three uniforms, they weren't like greatly different. They literally just had substitution of color, which I thought was really, really cool. They have the white, they've got that like blue sort of navy cobalt color, and then you've also got the black one, which is one of my favorites. But I had to mention this. I also thought it was really cool with the creativity that they had with the logo and the numbers. Like I see the numbers and I immediately go T-Wolves, right? So I wanted to introduce this into the list. So fire, so cool, and definitely one of those jerseys that are super, super iconic. So that is number 3. All right, we're at number 2. And the uniform that I went with is the 1996 Teal Detroit Pistons. Boy, you can't pass this. This shit is fire. The Teal Pistons, for me, was like a big, big change because prior to this uniform coming out, right, you had obviously the bad boy era Pistons that comes to mind when you think of the Pistons and teams of the past a lot of the time, right? And they had a very, very influential part on the game. Obviously, you know, you've got the bad boy era, the style of play that they had, that gritty, hard mentality, that no one's coming into the paint mentality was so infectious to people, and they kind of gravitated towards that sort of tribal thought process for all the fans that were Detroit fans and even other people that didn't really have a team. It was so easy for people to go, man, that's going to be my team. That's a hard-working, blue-collar team. And they played on that, and they stayed with that. But when Grant Hill entered the league in 94, shit changed. He was so good, so good. And it's one of those things where he's such a big what if when you think about obviously the injuries that he succumbed to and what his career could have looked like. But man, you can't take anything away from that man. That guy was a bad man. And doing it in the teal jersey was this signification of like this changing of the guard, that they were going to be playing in a different sort of way, but they were still going to be hard-nosed, you know, but he was so nice. Again, the things that I really liked about it was when they change uniforms, sometimes I think like you look at certain teams, right? And a perfect example of this is the Lakers, the Knicks, and the Celtics. Their jerseys, for the most part, their home and away jerseys really don't change all that much besides, you know, the scoop of the collar, maybe some side trimmings and prominent colors, but they're pretty much the same. When the Pistons went through this transition in 96, they went in a completely different direction, and the only color that stayed was white. And they went with this really, really cool Pistons logo with like the exhaust pipes on the S's, and it's just, oh man, can't go. For me, I can't go past this. The teal era is just so good, and man, I think that it's one of those jerseys for me that I'm gonna have to add to my shopping list to try and get my hands on. I don't think my girlfriend's gonna like it. Keep it secret. Shh. All right, we have made it to my number 1 out of my top 10 jerseys and uniforms, or uniforms, jerseys, whatever you want to call it. Uniforms from the NBA of all time. Can I get a drum roll, please? Okay, I've gone with the Phoenix Suns from 1992. Now there is an asterisk next to it. The asterisk is the fact that in 1994, they introduced the black variant of it. Now, when I think of the Phoenix Suns, I kind of think of all three jerseys being worn at one point, and it wasn't until I was actually doing my research that I realized that they weren't worn at the same time. So they were all actually different, but it's the same design. It's essentially a slight difference in obviously the predominant color, but I really like the color tones. Again, it kind of comes back to that color splashes that they've used. They've also been influenced by this design, and you can see it in later years where they've had uniform changes throughout the Phoenix Suns. It was really, really cool. I really like the color. The purple and orange goes together. The black is super, super cool. And it also just makes me think of their run in the Western Conference to go to the finals, which is unfortunately, I think, Charles Barkley's deepest chance in getting into the finals, but we know that. Anyways, that's my top 10 jerseys of all time. I hope you enjoyed it. And I missed one. If there's one that you think that I should have included, jump in the comments, let me know. All right, take care. Until next time, peace. What's good? Thanks for checking out the video. I hope you liked it. Please make sure you like and subscribe. And if you got a second, check out this other video I got right here. I think it's in this area here. Check it out.